Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August 1st edition of the Product Analytics Group Sync. I will go ahead and share my screen, and we will start with the board review. Cool. So getting into it, we've got the milestone planning issue and then adding product analytics to experiment features list. Does this one need a bit of, I'm assuming because it's open, there's no workflow label, we still need to define exactly how this one's going to work, James? Or, yeah, until that we can't release until.
Yeah, I don't think we had a chance to refine this before the milestone kicked off.
Yeah.
But we want to put this behind the beta opt-in for the rest of the experiments, just because it gets us the T's and C's that we need.
Okay. Got it. Then we should work to define that then hopefully before the next group sync.
Yeah.
We've got a issue in design for creating a custom dashboard flow, MVC. Anything you can share on this one?
Kevin tagged the team in that, and we've had a lot of back and forth feedback on it. I think we're really close to the MVC design. He's also got the bigger vision in there as well, just so that we can kind of see where we want to get to longer term with things like other data inputs or defining a visualization, creating a visualization as a part of the flow. But the MVC is going to be pretty straightforward of name a dashboard, drop visualizations into it, and it's all within the project that you want to, the dashboard and the data are coming from.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Then moving on. Nothing in blocked, planning breakdown, or ready for development, but lots of stuff in dev. Oh, and you've got the first issue here.
Yeah, so I've just pulled this one back into dev. It has actually been reviewed, but there's a lot of merge conflicts since the settings page was merged. So I'm just resolving those at the moment. I should be back into review it today.
Got it. I guess we got unlucky with like those two things kind of having a little bit of overlap.
Totally. Yep. They both changed exactly the same stuff.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, thanks for working through those conflicts. We've got the usage view user story map. James, anything you want to update on here?
I'm getting close to having that wrapped up and should be able to start creating the MVC issue for that. I'm going to put together a really rough wireframe based on existing usage quota screens, and we'll just reuse those kinds of graph for this. So should have that wrapped up within this milestone. Hopefully early in the milestones, we can start to scope some implementation issues.
Awesome. Cool. I've got the next one for the customer facing infrastructure release. So this is kind of the source of truth for everything that has to happen as far as what infrastructure and security have suggested or recommended rather, in order for us to kind of really do this canonical security review. That said, right now, I just merged in some configurator changes. I've been resolving some deployment issues just with our move to Vault and things like that. There's just kind of ironing out some bugs, but we're making good progress there. My goal, my goal is to get to the point where we've made all the security changes that have been recommended to us. And what I hope to do is actually just see if we can get that reviewed, since that's effectively just a different environment that's just not actively managed by infrastructure, so that we could at least get the permission to onboard some external customers while we continue to work on, doing whatever packaging or whatever needs to be done in terms of actually getting deployed to an infrastructure managed environment, just so we can kind of make some more movement there without holding this up any further. So that's my goal. There are more issues that are actively assigned to me, but they're in a different group and project, so that's why you're not seeing it here. That said, you can go from this issue into others to see what exactly has to be done. But a lot of it is just in review, and so just a little bit of a merge train that I'm kind of sorting through right now. I realize that was also a confidential issue, but I think it's just due to the nature of security issues, and then nothing particularly, at least in this issue that I showed, that was sensitive. So no video editing for me today. All right, we've got add missing trailing breadcrumbs for analytics dashboard pages. That's assigned to Rob, as well as the cube ClickHouse driver upstream fix, so that we can actually fill dates with null values or 0 values. Rob's not on the call, so we can go ahead and move on. Same thing for Jan as well, for adding a retry button to analytics dashboard panel errors, something that's related to the fact that we have some query timeouts. I know there's some issues that have been created due to some memory limits and things like that, so we can continue to hopefully investigate those, at least give the opportunity to retry the queries there. We've got some security improvements to make in relation to the ClickHouse cluster. Just trying to think of what we can share there. Basically, just making sure that it's only accessible within the same environment, but nothing more between like just what clusters need access to it directly. Ellen, you've got the loading state for the shared dashboard listing.
Yeah, this one is reviewed now. Couldn't be merged because there was a master broken thing going on, but that one should be through soon.
Awesome. And then Aaliyah's got removing initialized analytics worker class file in review. This is the old Jitsu worker that is no longer used. So it's just a little bit more of that cleanup there, which I am very keen on applying to our stack as well. But that will come later. And then as far as verification, Ellen, you also have the issue here.
Yeah, so the project settings page for analytics merged last night. So I'll go through and verify that this morning. Yeah, nice to have that one through finally.
Awesome. Yeah, that one's that one's been in the oven for a while. So thanks for your patience and effort on that.
Sure.
Cool. Last week, I believe the bookmark was the designer outputting incorrect visualization definitions. So we've got 8 issues closed since then, which is great to see. Starting with removing just related backend code from product analytics feature that Halil has done, as well as hiding analytics dashboards for users without access, as well as a follow-up related to the just related cleanup in terms of the cube schema definitions. And then we've got removing the title property and updating the select to the file name in analytics visualizations, which is completed by Jan. And then, Owen, you've got the next 3 issues here. Anything you wanted to call out with these?
The error state one is pretty nice because we can actually see which things are failing now, and we'll be building on top of that for some validation stuff that's coming up. That's really cool.
Nice.
And the hiding configure custom dashboards banner, there was a change happening as well from value streams analytics. They were trying to hide that for all groups. So that's been done as part of this as well. So that's, yeah, completely disabled for groups now until they're ready for that. This last one was just a little follow-up. Not too much to say there.
Great. And then Alan had closed the issue for product analytics queries failing to load. I know there were some other related issues there regarding query performance, but I think there's a little bit of a follow-up here. Looks like it's related to the memory issue. So we'll investigate that. Great. That will wrap up the board review. James, you have the next few points.
Finding the agenda again. So wanted to give some space and time to talk through the proposed product OKRs, the objective, and I'll open this up and then share my screen. Figure everything out. Key results. There we go. Making that bigger. The release product analytics open beta is our big objective, or the big objective that I'm targeting for the quarter. Sorry, that's the key result. There we go. The objective: complete the product analytics beta epic and open the beta program for customers. So obviously release the product analytics beta. For me, delivering a blog post about product analytics beta and direction. That's kind of our go-to-market motion here. We're not going to be actively marketing the open beta, but a little bit of kind of underground marketing. When we say release, it's more of a it's now available, but isn't going into the release post. We're not necessarily going to be providing a bunch of extra collateral to the sales force to go out and sell it. But we will be looking for customers to help us stress test the thing. And then holding some number of customer feedback calls with those experiment participants. So I'm reaching back out to folks who were interested, seeing if they're still interested. So as soon as we can get them onboarded, wrapping up that infrastructure work that we talked about earlier, we can get them in and get feedback. We're having great feedback sessions with our internal users already. So really excited to get outside of GitLab interest as well. Keep looking at those videos, sharing them with the team, and understanding where there's opportunities for us to solve more pain points with product analytics for those first customers. So want to open it up for questions, comments, concerns. We kick off the new fiscal year quarter today. It's August, September, October. So this will be definitely a big stretch to get into beta, but I think it's something that we can do based on what right now we know about the work that's in the beta epic anyway.
Yeah, I mentioned it before. It's ambitious, but it's achievable. So I think that's the right kind of OKR.
I think the biggest problems that we're facing or that are in the way are the infrastructure work to get experiments started. And then some of those known unknowns around hardening the stack and a little bit of resiliency. And so I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to be creative around what are ways that we can get to beta that aren't necessarily going to scale to GA for reliability, resilience of the product analytics stack, of like where we put our rate limits, what those rate limits look like. I think it'll be a great opportunity for the team to brainstorm really how can we get to that objective within the time frame.
Yeah, for sure. Not for the intention of conflating the terms, but beta will kind of really be an experimental phase for us in terms of trying what works as far as rate limits and scaling strategies. Not that we expect to really treat beta as an experiment, but yeah, it's a little bit different in terms of us figuring out how we want to actually scale for GA. But I think it'll be good to explore that. As far as the feed, so obviously we want to get feedback from external customers as well. But have there been any common themes from internal customers, at least so far from your conversations?
Nothing big yet. I have a session tomorrow morning with the design team to talk about pajamas. I asked Jeremy specifically to try to go look at Visualization Designer. And I know that he's had some questions around the page view stuff. I know we worked through the unique user problem with them already and that they're good there. What we're finding so far is that these teams are interested in the product, but they don't have specific product problems to solve or problems to solve that the features address, just because it hasn't been a main thing for them to go look at yet. So the data is interesting, but it's not as useful as it could be just because they're not trying to solve it. Like it's not the right tool for them yet. So that's kind of been the feedback so far. Gotcha.
Yeah, and especially if it's in the context of pajamas, I think one thing that I created an issue for, but I don't think we've yet prioritized is like the what we discussed, at least in discussions about, or discussed in discussions, what we discussed regarding being able to filter out the user ID type that we were having that trying to reach a decision on. Because, for example, for pajamas, there's a lot of CI pipelines running that aren't actually running in production. So being able to filter that noise out, well, not noise, but filtering out those domains to see what's the authentic production traffic will be useful. And actually, when they do have questions, answering those. So yeah.
And one thing that Jeremy shared this morning was around their top page views. I mean, they're interested in the top pages. How many are what are the top pages that are showing up? We're counting an anchor link as a separate page. So there's, if you look at right now their dashboard, it looks like there's only 2 pages visited. You just see the duplicate. And if you look at the URL that it would link to, it's an anchor on that page somewhere. But I think that'll be a user experience thing that we got to get sorted out. And that's on my agenda to talk with him tomorrow. What would you expect to see? Like, what would be useful when you click on that? Not just going to where it is, but maybe some more details about it. So that'd be interesting to dig into. What are you trying to do with this?
Yeah, for sure. It'd be interesting also to see. I mean, technically, it could be a preference thing, right? Like, some people would want to see, well, I get that they're going to this page, but they're looking for one specific thing, or do they want it consolidated? But then you could segment it later on where it's like, yes, you have, here's all the total visits to this page, but it's more nuanced than that. So
yeah, I don't think that we'll make a change based on one user's feedback.
No, for sure.
It's definitely a good signal for us to add to the list, and then we can sort through and sift through and kind of synthesize that into what's going to make this more usable generally, and then how can we give options to people who want a different view.
Yeah, I think overall we have a good foundation to start on, and we have a lot of like flexibility to figure out what we would deem best for ourselves as end users in general.
Yeah, I was going to go start scraping through department OKRs and see if product analytics could be a tool that helps somebody achieve their OKRs for the quarter. And I think that's going to get us, if we can get into some of those projects and help them look at usage of a project, that might be helpful for us, because those are the kind of users that we want. That's where we can provide a lot of value with the product analytics feature set. So it's on my list for this week and next week as those OKRs start to settle down and get real.
One thing that might be useful as well, and I think this would also support analytics instrumentation's OKRs in terms of their unified API. I know at some point they want to start sending events to our snowplow collector for the usage within product analytics dashboards. So I'm just making a note for myself to kind of check in to see where if we can potentially dovetail there. But yeah, I'm still working on the engineering OKRs, so we'll see.
If I could start to count unique active users, dashboards in product analytics,
yeah, awesome. I guess the only other thought, we've been struggling a little bit with infra, but I think once we get out, once we get into the official experiment phase, I think, once we figure out, or at least have some ideas for rate limiting for beta, it wouldn't be that much more difficult from a complexity scale to like just open it up to more people. So yeah, just need to make that first progress of being able to host red data. So yeah.
Owen, did you have any questions? We touched on this briefly in the section call earlier this week, but wanted to make sure that we got some engineering questions in there too.
No, not at this stage.
Cool. Dennis, it looks like you're next up on the agenda.
Was there anything we wanted to talk for abuse limits?
Sorry, skipping right over things. Just wanted to talk about how do we balance that availability and making sure that we're not, well, when I say we, I mean, y'all aren't constantly getting paged or have alerts going off, trying to keep the stack up and running. Seeing if we can start to maybe get stats from the folks running some of those AI experiments and see what kind of volumes they're getting. And is that even something that would translate into the kind of event volume that we would get, that we want to set thresholds around? And then the other thing was, with this being behind the experiment toggle, can we reasonably expect folks to onboard quickly, or is it going to be, hey, if they happen to run across it, they're going to join? We've only had 2 or 3 other companies that are interested, or customers that are interested. So without a big push from us into the sales force or into the field teams to say, hey, go get everybody working on the beta, I don't know that we're going to see a ton of volume to start. So this might be a problem we don't necessarily have to solve we should still try to solve for it and understand where the rate limits need to be, but it may not need to have as much rigor as it would if we're going into GA specifically for beta.
No, for sure. I think it just comes down to what we think is a sensible set of a sensible strategy for how we want to roll this out. And you touched on this yesterday during the section meeting as well. It's like there's the difference between we've achieved the release and we're actually pushing the release, like in terms of marketing and field, like you just mentioned. I think and this is I'm glad this is going to be recorded because I'm going to review it, remember it later. But if we do something like, I don't want to over optimize and say like, oh, we have to put really low limits just because we don't know how many people will opt in. I think if we do something like, okay, the experiment toggle is still behind a feature flag, and then we've set sensible limits and have a general idea of like how many people we could potentially get, then I think that's enough. Because if we see that things start to immediately, let me back up a little bit. In the context of like some of the AI experiments we run, we have run into cases where like we've launched it, more than 100 people start using it at the same time, and it just immediately goes down. So there is the potential for that. But I think if we do get a sense of that, then we can just say, hey, let's shut off the experiment toggle for now. We've kind of closed the door on the beta for now as we work to iron out the issues, and then we can use that to just generally have a stable set of users and events coming in to figure out what we need to change to do that. So I don't want us to like imagine all the edge cases that could happen or things that could go wrong, or in reality, maybe there's only a handful of people that actually do opt into it until we actually start making a big push for it. So I think, yeah, just putting the toggle behind a feature flag and doing some level of rate limiting, just enough for us to like, we're going to have to start building that foundation anyways for YouTube view and like billing and purposes anyways. I think that's a good enough like iteration or MVC to say, hey, this will get us the majority of the way there to have, a decent level of confidence that this can handle, people opting into it without us paying too much attention to it. And if we need to, we have a fail safe and we can shut off the toggle for at that point. So
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. Because based on how things are going, it's probably just going to be like myself and Nels like being paged. So, we have to bear that in mind as well. So, yeah.
I don't want to burn you all out. So,
yeah, I already have an on-call schedule next week, so I don't need that every day. So, yeah. Cool. Did that answer your questions, or was there anything else you wanted to?
No, that covers it, I think, for me. I just wanted to make sure we had some space and time to talk about that. So
cool. I'll add that as a comment to the issue as well, so we can kind of work that into the scope. If I can find my mouse cursor. Cool. Then for me, it's just a little bit of a read-only, but I'll verbalize it anyways. There was engineering as a whole wants to just make sure all engineers are aware of, the required stops, which is basically an upgrade path in order to run certain migrations. And it's arguably more back-end centric, but can influence the front end as well with certain changes. But in some cases, we do have upgrade paths where it's not super easy to just go from any version to another, and you have to actually make required stops to go from, let's say, for example, like 14.2.1 to 14.3.6. I'm making these numbers up. There's documentation on it, but it's just as a refresher to everyone. We want to try to avoid that. We also want to avoid, making migrations that require downtime and things like that. So I've included a couple of links here just for the engineers to kind of take a look at. In terms of required stops and avoiding downtime, and how we generally approach breaking changes. It's a good refresher for myself because I totally forgot that sometimes we have required stops in the upgrade path, which is not ideal. It's not often that some self-managed customers, have to. It's already a tough process to upgrade from time to time, and so to say, hey, you have to run these 5 versions first before you actually get to the version you want to go is not ideal. So it's good to think of more creative solutions if we can. And it talks about, which we've done in the past with our existing columns, for example, for credentials and things like that, as we just got started with product analytics using Jitsi and things like that, where we ignore columns and then 1 or 2 milestones later, we eventually remove it. So there's definitely ways to approach this. But yeah. Not prepared in time, but I wanted to call this out since James, Sam, and the rest of product management had gotten their OKRs done on time. But I just want to kind of thematically highlight what we're thinking for as far as engineering, which I think is mostly in line with what James is thinking. So just calling out, of course, we want to get out to customers. We want to figure out what's necessary to actually get out to beta in terms of performance and logging, and making sure that we're able to have the baseline level of monitoring to be able to say, okay, things are going down. The health checks are failing. We need to shut off the opt-in, for example, as well as the cost and performance analysis. And so as I may have mentioned to some privately, but I've become a designated insider, so I can be able to see some of the more sensitive information to help out to see the costs in terms of like being able to help James and Sam out with the pricing strategy and things like that, but as well as being able to see how much we can squeeze out in terms of once we actually get to, like, as we went through the build board review, we have encountered some performance issues, but then how can we balance that versus, the performance per dollar that we're spending in terms of cost to make sure that we're, one, we're pricing it correctly, but two, we're running as efficiently as we can. And of course, it's not going to be, we're not at that point yet where we would want to over optimize on performance per dollar, but we definitely want to keep it in mind. So just kind of laying down the groundwork in terms of what that would entail. At the same time, we've got a number of issues outlined in the beta and the GA epics, but as we discuss and figure things out, as we meet with more and more customers, I think there's going to be a general sense of adding more filters, adding improvements to what we've built so far, and how we can optimize in terms of the custom dashboard experience and things like that. So whatever polish we can add as we kind of just try to catch up on the infrastructure side of things. But hopefully we'll have those OKRs later this week.
All right, those teams look good. I'm excited to see the OKRs and the numbers attached to the KRs.
Yep.
Sweet.
Me too. Awesome. Then show and tell. We haven't done that in a while. I mean, I guess, it's just Alan, not to put you on the spot. And I don't think anyone wants to watch me just hit play on a CI pipeline to see a environment deployment fail. But Alan, anything you want to show off, or
I got nothing prepped now.
No worries. Cool. Yeah, I should open encouragement to anyone watching, record a demo, maybe let's see what you're working on. I know we talk about a lot of the issues, but it might be good to see, when we got error states into the panels or adding retries to panel errors. I think it'll be good to kind of help demo and show off, and we can use that to eventually generate some excitement once customers are able to get their hands on it. But yeah. Cool. Then we've reached the end of the agenda. We're at time, but is there anything else anyone wants to cover? All right, then James, Alan, good to see you too. And good rest of your days, rest of your week. And thanks for whoever's watching the recording.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Ciao.